The best laid plans of mice and men often go astray, as the adage goes. This was initially intended to be my second video in the Demon Slayer series, but then so many scripts and concepts intervened. To add even more irony to this late production is the fact that the content of this video predates the Aristotelian insights that appear in the very first video of this series. When I first properly met Zenitsu, well, I couldn't stand him. I was very interested in meeting Tomioka again, and I had been thoroughly enjoying every moment Tanjiro and Nezuko were on screen. And then Blondie began screaming his head off. So annoying. Shut up already. How can anyone endure it? Do I really wish to keep watching this anime with such a crybaby, sissy, cowardly loser? But then he fell asleep. While that moment didn't cause me to like him, it did pique my interest in him. Or, if not in him precisely, at least in the mechanism wherein he manifests his power or strength. I have seen many anime in my time, and while there may be a prior anime wherein a hero physically fights while sleeping, I have not yet seen it. I am not going to delve too deeply into why Zenitsu's character interests me in this video, other than to touch briefly upon it to help demonstrate why I like Zenitsu. I'll be doing a more in-depth analysis into his character in an upcoming video. Zenitsu's strength manifesting while he's asleep fascinated me as it almost perfectly demonstrates Lacan's concept of misrecognition through the mirror stage. This misrecognition, Zenitsu's inability to properly recognize his own self, eventually led directly to me liking him. Simple, right? In case all that's not completely obvious, I'll lay out the cards a bit more plainly. Jacques Lacan was a pivotal Freudian psychoanalyst from the mid to late 20th century. One of the ways in which he contributed to the field of psychoanalysis was in his development of the mirror stage theory in regards to human development. While the myth of Oedipus and the Oedipal complex are more common knowledge theories emerging from the Freudian school, the mirror stage, rooted in the myth of Narcissus and Echo, is as important. If you're not familiar with the myth of Narcissus and Echo, I recommend checking out Ovid's Metamorphoses, Book 3, beginning at section 339. The best summary of the tale I've come across is from Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media. He writes, "The Greek myth of Narcissus is directly concerned with the fact of human experience, as the word Narcissus indicates. It is from the Greek word narcosis, or numbness. The youth Narcissus mistook his own reflection in the water for another person. This extension of himself by mirror numbed his perceptions until he became the servo-mechanism of his own extended or repeated image. The nymph Echo tried to win his love with fragments of his own speech, but in vain. He was numb. He had adapted to his extension of himself and had become a closed system." McLuhan then poignantly observes that it is, perhaps, indicative of the bias of our intensely technological and, therefore, narcotic culture that we have long interpreted the Narcissus story to mean that he fell in love with himself, that he imagined the reflection to be Narcissus. The mirror stage in psychoanalysis parallels the Narcissus story with regards to the ability of infants to recognize their own reflections. Unlike Narcissus, who is never able to realize that the image is himself, the infant who successfully traverses the mirror stage recognizes the being in the mirror as the same person/me, rather than another person. However, for Lacan, the ability to recognize the self during the mirror stage still produces misrecognition. Remember how McLuhan referred to Narcissus as a closed system? The closed system indicated that Narcissus was not able to process anything outside himself, since he mistook his reflection as being other rather than being self. Whereas the tragedy of the myth lies in Narcissus misrecognizing his own image, for Lacan, the infant's mistake is in recognizing the individual, holistic I as the self which is prior to a communal self. By mistaking the prior existence of a communal self with the individual self, the infant is put on a trajectory towards an alienating destination, an inability to graft the gestalt of the self onto the preconceived, projected image. In layman's terms, what Lacan is saying is that when infants perceive their own reflections as me rather than another person, they do not realize that other people directly influence their sense of self prior to their own self-awareness. Misperceiving the manner in which the other person and I commingle to instantiate me means that in becoming an adult, the developing human will not properly integrate the relational aspect of the self with the self-image seen in the mirror. In other words, who you see in the mirror is not simply your own self, but your own self as well as the relationships you have with other people and the world around you. The relational aspect of yourself is actually foundational or prior to your own self-understanding. Or, yet another way, before we are able to see our own selves in a mirror, the mirror first reflects how others see us. How does Zenitsu perceive himself? As a coward, a weakling, and a good-for-nothing. He is a young man who fears being alone, who greatly desires the affection of women and is terrified that he'll never receive it. Zenitsu manifests these attributes not only in self-description, but also in the means by which he engages with others, constantly screaming in terror and anxiety, shivering and sniveling, and otherwise acting like a petulant infant. But what happens when Zenitsu falls asleep? His personality makes a complete 180, and he enters into a waking dream state. As with Freud before him, dreams are important for Lacan's understanding of humans. For Lacan, dreams reveal the distinction between self-perception, the Innenwelt, and reality, the Umwelt. The dream self represents an authentic manner of integrating the self with society, a manner of showing oneself who one truly is. When Zenitsu is asleep then, he becomes his true self. His inner self properly engages with the outside world as he ought to. Now, not only does this deserve expansion as it concerns the first 3 episodes we engage with him, but it takes on even more relevance by the time episode 17 rolls around. I shall take the time to develop the role of dreams with regards to the mirror stage in the next Zenitsu video. For the time being, though, I hope you see how his sleeping piqued my interest. When I watched The Boar Bares Its Fangs, Zenitsu Sleeps, the first time, I realized immediately that I was seeing an anime example of Lacanian misrecognition. Waking Zenitsu does not recognize himself as he truly is, powerful, competent, and calm, all of which is exhibited by the swordsman of his dream state. As when I first finished that episode, I am still very intrigued and am willing to put up with his screaming and sniveling in order to witness the moment of recognition. That is, the moment when he properly integrates his inner self with his social self. But none of that explains why I like him. It is the foundation for it, but it is not the reason for it. It's why I put up with him, why I look forward to his character developing, and why I cheer him on, but it's not why I like him. The reason why I like him is far, far simpler than why I find him interesting. The reason why I like Zenitsu is because at the end of episode 13, he is still deeply rooted in misrecognition. He sees himself as a weakling, a coward, a loser. He is terrified of demons. He is afraid of pain. He is afraid of dying a painful death. And yet, for all that, he still protects Tanjiro's box, knowing only 2 things. 1, that it is important to Tanjiro, and 2, it contains a demon, the very thought of which terrifies him. Thinking himself weak and cowardly, incapable of even defending himself for fear of the boar-headed fiend that terrifies him nearly as much as demons do, he protects the box to the point of extreme bodily injury, and was even prepared to receive a death blow before releasing the box. More surely than his sleeping state, when Zenitsu defends Tanjiro's demon in a box, he reveals his true character. Believing himself weak, he nonetheless demonstrates a fortitude that is difficult to find in people who know themselves to be brave or strong. I like him because even though he thinks he's weak and incompetent, when he acts, he is actually strong and dependable. Acting protectively when he believes himself to be so weak demonstrates a greater strength and fortitude than if he had been acting in the full knowledge of his own strength. The word for that is courageous. And the reason why I like Zenitsu is precisely for that reason. Of all the characters we meet in Demon Slayer, he is, in my opinion, the most courageous one. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this or found any of it thought-provoking, please feel free to share the video, drop a comment below, and take the conversation off the digital platform and into the physical world. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you feel so moved. Until next time, fare thee well.